Well, it's actually a very strange story, in that on the night when we were in the hangar at Grootfontein, before we were going to jump the next morning, Skillie had a very strong premonition that he was going to die the next day. And he spoke to his captain, who was incidentally my captain as well, and he said, "Listen, I'm not going to make it tomorrow." Obviously, the captain said, "Listen, lots of guys are worried about it. Don't worry about it." And Skillie gave him some last wishes, etc., etc. So he had a very strong premonition. He was jumping number 13 out of, I think it was the port side of the aircraft, which traditionally is not the luckiest number. Now, to bolster that, on that particular aircraft, there are two number 13s. You've got the port side number 13, goes from 1 to 32, and you've got the starboard side, which goes from 1 to 32. So there are two 13s. The other 13 on that aircraft was occupied by Eddie Backhouse, who was also one of the people killed at Cassinga. Now that's 50% of the killed in action people who were on a number 13 seat. So I don't know whether this had anything to do with Skillie's apprehension. Obviously, he didn't know about Eddie being in number 13, but that's how it started. When Skillie got to the door, there was a problem. I don't know whether his static line got hung up or his rifle hitched onto the side of a seat or something, but there was a problem. And he then went out the door, and being a very small chap, he was about 5'5", if I remember correctly. He was obviously carrying just as much heavy weight as we were, so that made it a lot more difficult for him. He went out the door, and the guy who was behind him saw him beneath him, quite far beneath him, and he said his parachute looked a bit crumpled from above. You can't see the person, but you can see the parachute. And I think what happened to him is he went out in a somewhat unstable position. And when you do that, what happens is the static line rips the parachute out of its holding bag on your back. And because you're not facing the front of the plane flying away from you, it gets ripped out and twisted, and you develop quite a number of twists. In fact, you don't have to twist yourself. The bag in the slipstream turns and twists. Now, when that happens, you can't steer the damn thing because you've got these twists in the lines above you. So you've just basically got to go where the parachute takes you, and you try and kick out of the twist, but it's very difficult. And in particular, on such a low jump, we were probably at 450, 500 feet at that stage. Take 100 feet for the damn thing to open. So you can say it was at 400 feet. He probably couldn't kick out of multiple twists in time. So he couldn't steer away from the river like I did and like many others did. And that's possibly why he went in. And, being such a small, light guy, what happens is as soon as you hit that slipstream, which is 130 knots plus, let's say, 50 for the prop wash, when you're a small, light guy, you can get thrown against the side of the aircraft, all sorts of things. And in fact, as I said earlier, he had lost 2 teeth earlier in a parachute jump, probably smacked out by the lift webs when, he had been unstable because he was so light. So that is to me the most convincing thing that happened to Skillie and why he went into the river. Whether it was his unease or his premonition was a self-fulfilling prophecy, or whether he genuinely did have some kind of supernatural thought about it is obviously quite open to question. But I think there's a good reason why he went into the river.
That is a phenomenal story that he sensed it, he spoke about it, he then drew the number 13, and then to compound that, it all must have just, all the pieces in his own mind, those last minutes must have just been horrifying. That he's thinking, this is exactly what I was thinking. I'm going to have a problem. I've got 13. My rifle's caught on the seat. I go out, the bag rips, the static line pulls out my parachute and it's twisted. And I don't have enough time to correct it. We're in the wrong place because we had the drop zone was versus where the plane was immediately climbing. So there was no time to correct it. The river's there. It's a deep, wide river. And I'm carrying all this extra weight because I'm here for this battle. It's going to be an amazing battle. And I'm just heading straight for this water, knowing that as soon as I hit that water, all this weight is going to pull me down. That must have been a horrific experience for him. And the camaraderie now is that that event has happened, but we're going to bring him home.
It's simply that these things must be done. They really have to be done, and that's the way the paratroopers feel about Skillie. We as paratroopers are in a peculiar position in that our fighting happens behind enemy lines. Now compare that to a normal infantryman who gets killed on the lines. Now he has lines of ambulances, field hospitals, big hospitals, helicopters to get him to help. We don't. When our guys are killed, they're killed far behind enemy lines, and it is our responsibility to take them back. And if you don't take that seriously, you're not going to end up with a very, how can I say, motivated crew. You know, you need to know that your buddies are going to look after you, living or dead. I mean, you could be wounded as well, but those guys must take you home. And without that implicit promise, you know, you can't produce first-class troops. So even though it's now 40 years later, it's still just as important to get the guy home than it was on the day of the battle. It's just as important, if not more important, as far as we're concerned.
It's the ultimate in camaraderie, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That you know no one gets left behind.
Yeah, and we left Skillie behind. And that's got to be undone.
They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.